Good morning. My name is Gwen and I'm a lecturer at UNISA in the Department of Art and Music. My speciality is visual art, and the lesson today is about introducing drawing. We are working towards drawing a portrait, but we will start with the basics of drawing, including the material, the surfaces, and techniques in various media. Later in the units, in the lesson, you will also explore text and lettering as one of your media. But today we won't focus on that. So looking at line is the pathway between 2 points. It is moving from one to the other, but line is also a way of understanding an object. So if I have an object and I want to engage with it, line would be able to describe the outlines, defining the boundary between this as a positive form and this as a negative form. It will describe the surface, the volume of the object, to tell you, give you information about how this object is formed. The line can be seen sometimes as part of talking about the material of the object. For example, in this case, if you were to utilize an object with learners, I often love to have the learners handle the object so that they can understand the feel and the materiality of the object. So I'm going to start this lesson by really continuing with different ways of utilizing the material. First of all, when I start with a drawing exercise, I organize my material around me so that one already is familiar. I have a lovely bucket of charcoal here with some erasers, putty rubbers, which really works well with charcoal. One gets charcoal in various thicknesses, and each has a different way of, I'm just going to place that there, a different way of expressing, of conveying the feeling of emotion. There are also charcoal media such as this, which has a plastic wrapping around it. So I'm going to pack a few of this out. If the school where you are working does not have media that come in this format, you can ask the kids, or you yourself can bring even bits and pieces that is part of your braai, a leftover braai, and have some of the ash and the leftovers to act as in-between media. Okay, so I'm going to start with working with various of these and just play with them. So if we think of line, a sharp line, I just want to show you how I'm also holding my medium. One gets a different feeling of your medium when you hold it like this, and your movement is really from the shoulder and the elbow. I can make large marks. If I hold my medium like this, I have the movement of the hand and the fingers, which will generally give me a much smaller curve than using the hand. So your body, your medium is really an extension of the body, and this, which is much larger. And then if I'm going to work from the shoulder, I can go right over and work with a very large mark. So I think it's important that when you introduce your own media in a class format, that you involve the body as part of your drawing media. Okay, so I often find when I teach that having people are scared. Learners are scared of their medium, and to allow them to simply play by seeing what kind of marks can they make. So ask them to do dots, for example, as a range of media, then tiny little bits of longer media, and then as sharp as you possibly can get. How would you have to turn and twist to get really, really sharp marks out of your medium? Even if I use the thick quality, how do I get sharp marks? And then if they've played a little bit with various from short to medium to longer lines, then you say, okay, now we're going to see what is the thickest line we can make, and how can that be a short line, a medium line, and really a long line, and maybe even like this, very wide. This is now the bottom of the paper coming through. Wide marks stretching over your paper, finding, building up areas. So in each of these cases, you can break your small, thin charcoal and see what happens if you work with thicker qualities on that, in that. Okay, so I've just worked with a medium. I like to work with my hands as well, getting the fingers a little bit full of medium, and then seeing how could this also be an extension. So you really encourage whatever you place in front of your students, that they can discover, because their specific body is part of the medium, what kind of line can I get, and if I wiggle it, how does the line move from thin to thick? So how can I get in one line and one movement a variety of thicknesses out of that instrument? Now another kind of line is working with an eraser, where I'm going to blow that out, where you get, in a way, working with a negative shape. So I lift my medium out, and again with my pencil, with my eraser, I can get different qualities. So the back of the eraser will give me a sharp line, the front of the eraser a blunter line, and if you cut it through, you can work with the thickness of the eraser. So if I want to have a very sharp line in that dark surface that I create, I will work with that part. A blunter line, I'll work with this part, and then maybe even a line that is very wide, a negative shape, finding the form within this dark area and moving around. Okay. Modeling can also be working back into that, making marks into grey areas, building that up. There's various mark making, just so that you have that tonal variation. Okay, so that is charcoal. I'm just going to make a few marks with the pencil range. So by this time you know that in your pencils, I look like this. I always love getting my media all over me. That's why it's necessary to have some of this wonderful paper with you. Just before we go on to the pencils. So your range of pencils is from your H's, your HB, 4B, 6B, etc. And once again, allow your learners to simply feel a sharp line. Anything, don't let it be an object, let it be a mark. One of the ways of understanding the relationship of your instrument with emotion is to play music. When there's a very sharp, clean tone, maybe of a flute, you can have a thin line and ask the children, the learners, to create the feeling of what is experienced. So they might be playing, you might be playing a piece where there are string instruments that come in and have thin experience of this, and then then a drum comes in, and then you will ask your learners, what other pencil will you pick for the drum, and maybe it will be a 6B, so they'll feel the rhythm of the drum, and it will be boom, 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 boom. So you'll have loud and more rhythmic feeling. So already the learner will understand that line is a form of communication and giving you information about emotion. Okay, so this is the starting point of working with your drawing media. The next I want to talk about is looking at techniques for modeling. I'm going to make a few drawings now with the pencils and the charcoal, and I've laid my pencils out my charcoal out here. I put them on the paper so that I don't feel precious about my paper. People often feel intimidated by this empty white sheet staring at them, whether it's a paper or a piece of canvas. So one of the things before one starts to draw is to simply observe the object. So I've placed it on here, but I found that if I have to turn my head from here to here, it's actually out of my line. So I'm going to move it and see, maybe placing it on this side. That is easier for me because my eye, so simply observing the object and understanding in relation to the surface of your drawing. Do you need to shift? Do you need to shift the object in order to have a good line of view? So I have moved my object here. I find it. So I'm starting with something simple like a jar of with a bit of water in it, and just to start with understanding the geometry. I'm looking at where is the center point of the jar. Holding my pencil. So you often notice an artist does this. They hold the pencil in various ways. So this equates the verticality of the page. If I hold it like this, it's like understanding how the verticality will lie on the page. If I hold my pencil at a diagonal, it is to understand how this real space of the object can be translated to a space in this illusional space, my pictorial space. So when I hold the pencil horizontal, it's like understanding, okay, this is this line of my page. It is literally thinking about the line of my page here, and I think of how is it going to be positioned, what is the lowest, the highest, etc. And the other thing what I do is I imagine, I look at that and I try, sometimes I just move my hand and trying to think, okay, if the bottle is drawn, it will sit here on my page. You help your mind to envisage where the object will be. So the observation before you make a mark is important. So I'm going to start by just my central line, my vertical line. I'm going to draw that here. And then I'm going to try and measure it. So the best for measuring is actually a straight arm. You need to try and sit in the same position. If you hold your pencil here, you must just try and have an understanding, okay, my elbow is wedged in the side of my body and I would like to measure it. So I'm wedging it here and I'm going to use the pencil to see where's the middle more or less. Close one eye. And I'm holding it as if there's a sheet of glass here. So I'm measuring 1, 2, 3. So it's interesting from my point of view, if I divide my pictorial plane in 3 equal units, so I'll do 1, 2, oh, I just need to get a mark there, 1, 2, 3, I already understand something of the proportions of my glass. So let's say my unit is that, it's a third, 1, 2, 3. At the width, it's 1.5 about. So I'm taking that unit and I'm saying it's about 1.5. So more or less that. So I just map out what I think is going to be the general proportions. The problem with the geometric object is to find that curve upon which all these different circles work. So I feel I have to move my chair a bit so that my arm can comfortably, I realign my body so I can comfortably make the mark with my shoulder and my arm to try and find that circle. So I'll just start by, I've measured those, is for me the description of what I see there. It's not a total circle, it is more like a oval. What you'll find the moment your learners start drawing, and you can see I search for it on the paper. Okay, I search, where is this form? I search for it. And you'll find that your learner, when they draw an object like that, the first thing they try and do is they do this funny rugby ball-like thing that is pointy at the tips. And to get your form, your proportion correct, is to try and find the flow of the object. And then I want to look at, as you can see, I'm starting to find for myself the shape there, and I'm starting to find the shape here. Okay, so I'm trying to find that part of the bottle by having, you can see my whole body is moving while I'm drawing this. I want to now try and find this ridge because it's wider than the top ridge. So it's about here I can judge. So I once again complete as if my fingers feel right around the glass. So I know I can't see this, but I'm describing the information to the viewer about what this object is about. So I will move to tell the viewer in a way what the full form is about, and describing right around. I get that, and now I'm going to try and describe for the viewer. I can see that's wider and it goes narrower. So let's say I'm going to do that here. I'm finding now the wider, the fattest part of the bottle, trying to find that. And now right at the bottom there you can see it is thinner than that, so I'm going to find that. So starting to draw your bottle is simply really feeling the different shapes, feeling how it sits. Now I can try and describe with more detail. So I'm going to look quite intensely. I see there's also little bits there that talks about thicker. And now you can see I'm also doing my lines a little bit darker. So in the beginning they were quite light, and I see that. So this, I'm trying to find that curve of the glass bottle, finding the line there, and it's very light here, so I'm actually going to do it lighter. And I see there's a slightly darker point here, finding the curve there, and I see there's a bit of a ridge at the bottom. It's slightly wider there, so I want to describe that, moving around, describing that, flowing a few times so that my hand moves. You can see before I draw the dark line, I actually allow my body to find the form, because it's muscle memory as well, finding that form. And now moving around, describing the glass going around the back, and describing this sitting sort of wedged in here. Now the next step, let's just do this one. I'll find the round of that, going around the back. So now we've got the basic shape of the bottle. But you can see before you find that I've made a lot of structural planning. It's a bit like a house plan or something, and you build on top of that. I see there's a label as well, which I want. So once again, it sits on the bottle. So I got to understand my label curves around the bottle. It's, you can't have a jar and then there's a straight triangular shape sitting on top. It will literally float away from the shape. So I want the label to also feels like it's sitting on the shape, and I find the bottom and the top of the label, and now I can say, okay, fine, I'm going to find the line sitting here and the label there, and it goes around the bottle. And the bottom one, there's a circular shape more or less, and I find that line going around. So I have really focused on this little pickle jar to describe its geometric cylindrical shape. And that is the first exercise, and it's enough to do in a single lesson, just to have even various cylindrical jars to have that described. One can have more details, focusing on where do you find darker qualities, and then let's see, let's get that water line in. I haven't found it, so I go back to my structure, I search for it in the form, and I say, okay, fine, I'm going to see my water line there. Now at this stage I can see my jar is a little bit asymmetric, so I can correct that. I can go back and say, okay, it should be there. And even if you do a demo, I think it's very good to make some errors, because drawing and painting is really about finding the space. That one is not full of charcoal. So I can go and just erase that a little bit. It doesn't matter whether some of these structural lines are actually quite beautiful. It remains in a drawing. And one can now start drawing with different marks, trying to describe the darkness of certain areas, and observing the shape of the bottle, the shape of the shadows in the bottle. So if I do the lines here, it can be smudgy, but it can also be separate lines to try and place the darkness in there. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a technique of cross hatching. That is basically using lines, I'm just enlarging it, which is that direction, and then crossing it in a slightly other direction. It is much easier to get a shape by having lines more or less in one direction than to having it like this and that, because that implies a flatness. With this, I can start describing the cylindrical or the geometric shape of the roundness of this bottle, as if my fingers feel the edge slip down. So really just starting, and even goes right across, trying to describe the shape of the bottle with linear marks. It helps you to understand what the form of the bottle is. Sorry, shape is usually flat, form is a word we use for something that's three-dimensional. And so I want to now, I see some dark shapes in that, and I want to draw them in and maybe work with a slightly darker pencil, working with some hatching there. But I also want to tell the viewer that this is straight down. So I'm using some marks, just really going straight down, describing the shape, the flatness of it, and some marks describing it like this. So now I can go and again bring in some more hatching marks and really looking at the abstract forms as they arise. So your lines can do this and describe that, or it can be very small little marks, even little dotty marks to pick up a dark area. Maybe I've got another dark area here that I'll pick up with. Let's use some really sharp marks into it again. And I want to say that there's a dark thing here. Structuring. So for now, I'm not going to go much further. I think it speaks about structure, and we can build up the shadows as we go on, having it softer and building it darker, really searching for where's that shape, and the darkness go into that at the back. So now I'm ignoring the shape again because I'm focusing at the back, but I'm there, I find it again. And what I think is very important is it is the observation, but it's not about getting a perfect picture of what's in front of you. It is finding the shape, finding ways of marks to describe the shape so that the viewer can start understanding what that shape is. And I think it's a far better way of talking about art than you want to have a complete illustrative shape. So I can just work with some negative marks with my eraser again, softening some of my marks, softening some of the marks on that side. There's a very sharp light mark coming through there. You see how that modeled the roundness of the bottle. Okay, let's leave that at a lesson for drawing a simple geometric shape.